Hi guys, welcome to my tutorial today on splitting up full names into different parts. So, salutation, the title, Mr., Mrs., etc. You got your first name, you've got your middle names potentially, there might be none, and you got last name. Now this is quite specific format, so it always starts with the title, then it has the first name, and then if it doesn't have if it only has one more name, like Miss Kelly Jackson, that is salutation, first name, last name. So there's no middle name there. That's the assumption. If we go to Mr. Paul Robert Tilley, you've got a first name, one middle name, one last name. If you go to the top one, Mr. Matthew Samuel Alexander Glasby, you've got Matthew as the first name, Samuel Alexander as the middle names, and then Glasby as the last name. So I'm going to start off by putting in the salutation. Now, because it's in this strict format, and this is very important, we can actually just take a left statement. So if you do left of your name, and then the number of characters is just going to be, let's look for the search for a space within the text, A2. And let's just give that a trim at the end, just so we don't get any trailing or leading spaces. And if we drag that down, as you can see, we filled out our nice salutation field. So that's the first step. Now I'm going to go to the first name. Now we want to pick up the second word. So I'm going to actually use a different tactic to do this. I'm going to start with let's do a substitute. Now let's go for the full name. Let's substitute. Now we're going to look at the space, and then we're going to replace it with rept function, of a space for the length of the name amount of times. So what's this going to do? So you think, okay, why have you done that? Well, now this separates each word, where a word is governed basically by a space. And the space between each word is the length of the original string. So now I can kind of use the length of the string to pick out which part of this new string that I want. So I'm actually going to use a mid function here, because we want the second word. Now because we want the second word, I'm going to do my second word, 2, minus 1, so it's basically n minus 1, where n is like the word you want. So the second word you do 2 minus 1, now you times it by the length of the original string, and you add 1 to it, and then the number of characters will be the length of the string, because you only want one string, which is the length of the string, if that makes sense. And then just give that a nice little trim at the end, because that will get rid of any leading and trailing spaces. Now if we drag this down, we should get everyone's first name. Matthew, Nicola, Emma, Paul, Kelly, Peter, Samantha and Mark. So yeah, that's looking good. Now we're going to go to last name first, because middle name's probably the trickiest one. So if we go to last name, we want to get basically the last word, right? So what we can do, again, similarly to column C, is we can do this substitute function on the text. We take a space, and we give it rept of the space, length of the string. So again, we split the string exactly the same way. Now we're just going to use a right function this time, because we want the last word. And then we just want len of A2. And then again, we just want to trim that, because it's going to have leading and trailing spaces. So now this will give everyone's surname, as you can see. You've got Wolby, you've got Brown, you've got Jones, etc. So now if we go to the middle names, the way I do this is because I know there's a salutation and a first name that always precedes the middle name. We're going to basically count how many middle names they have. Now I'm going to do length of the string minus length of the substituted string, setting any space to nothing. Now, this gives me 4. This is saying there's 4 spaces. Now that indicates to me that there's 2 middle names, because as I've said, there's 2 names that precede the middle names. So 4 spaces basically means there's 5 names in total, and there's always going to be a salutation, first name and last name. So all I have to do is basically take away 2 from this answer. So if I do this minus 2, let's put this all in brackets so it looks easy to see, and let's drag this down. So let's just sense check it. So the top name, Matthew Samuel Alexander Glasby, yeah, 2 middle names. Nicola Jane Austen, 1 middle name. Emma Louise Godson's 1. Paul Robert Tilley is 1. Kelly Jackson is none, because obviously Kelly Jackson is first name, last name. Similar to Mark Wolby, that's just first name, last name. So now you think, okay, how can we, what do we do about this? Well, again, doing our favourite function, substitute, take the string. Now we set the old text, the space, to the rept of the new rept of a space, length of A2. Now this ain't going to close just yet, that's fine. So now that would split the string up just as we saw before, where there's many spaces in between each word. Now we want to take a mid function again, because we're sort of halfway through. Now we'll go to this parameter here. So we want to start from the third word, right? Because you've got your salutation and your first name preceding. So we start at the third. So 3 minus 1 times the length of the string A2 plus the 1. And the number of characters is going to be this amount here, which is the number of middle names, times by the length of the string. Close that all, and then give it a nice little trim to end. And you should get your middle names when you drag that down. So here you go, Mr. Matthew and Sammy Alexander Glasby, you've got Mrs. Nicola Jane Austin, Miss Emma Louise Godson, Mr. Paul Robert Tilley, Miss Kelly Jackson, Dr. Peter Ian Jones, Professor Samantha April Brown, and Mr. Mark Wolby. So this is pretty much name split now. So yeah, it's just a combination of doing this substitute trick which splits up each string by the amount of characters. Well, it splits the string by the length of spaces of the string. So you can then target each part, each word essentially of the string using the length of the original string, because you've now split it up to make that amount of spaces between each word. It's quite a clever trick, and I recommend for anything like this that you try and understand it properly. But yeah, that is my tutorial on splitting up names. But as I said at the start, the format is very important here. It's very constant. In the real life world, you probably wouldn't have it as nice as this, but this is not a bad start, definitely. Especially if you just want the last word of a string, this last column just gets the last word. Similarly, this gets the first word. And these will get the middle words, essentially. So yeah, the format of it's quite solid. Thank you for watching.